Happy, Lily whispered softly, a word no one had ever heard her say before. Grace froze, her hands trembling, tears flooding her eyes. For 7 years, their daughter hadn't spoken a single word. Not to her doctors, not to her parents, not to anyone. It happened on an ordinary afternoon in the least expected place near the garbage bins behind the mansion. The security cameras captured it all. Lily, the billionaire's silent daughter, sitting beside a poor black girl with torn shoes and a half-a-ton sandwich. The girl wasn't a therapist. She wasn't hired. She was just talking casually, gently, about the sunshine, about dreams, about hope. And there, amid the quiet hum of the estate's gardens, Lily laughed. Not the practiced smile she gave during therapy sessions, not the forced grin in family photographs, but a real laugh, pure, unfiltered. Alive. Edward Collins, her father, was in his study when the security alert flashed across his screen. At first, he thought it was another trespasser. He reached for the panic button, ready to summon the guards. But something stopped him. He saw his daughter, and she was smiling. For a moment, Edward forgot to breathe. He leaned closer, his eyes widening as Lily's lips moved, not random motions, not mimicry. She was forming a word, one perfect, impossible word, happy. Edward's finger hovered above the alarm button, but he couldn't press it. His chest tightened. Grace, standing behind him, gasped and pressed her hands to her mouth, sobbing. They watched the footage again and again, unable to believe what they were seeing. 7 years of silence broken not by science or speech therapy, but by a stranger. A poor girl from the streets sitting beside their daughter like an angel. In disguise, for years. Doctors had told them Lily's vocal cords were fine. Her hearing was perfect. Her brain scans normal. But her heart had built walls no one could break. Until that moment, Grace whispered through her tears. She spoke Edward. She finally spoke. Edward couldn't reply. His throat tightened as the truth struck him. All their wealth, their power, their endless efforts had failed. And yet this unknown girl had done in minutes what millions couldn't. The word replayed. In his mind, like a song he never wanted to end, happy. And as he stared at the screen, a question burned inside him. Who was this girl? And how did she awaken something in Lily that no one else could? Edward didn't know it yet, but that single word spoken in sunlight beside a girl who had nothing was about to change everything. The silence that had defined their lives was gone. The story of how it happened had only just begun. 3 months earlier. The Collins mansion stood on the edge of a quiet hillside, its tall glass windows reflecting the early morning sun. Inside, the air always smelled faintly of lavender and silence, the kind of silence that money couldn't. Filled at the center of that silence sat Lily Collins, 7 years old, her golden hair falling softly over her pale face. She was a child who heard everything but said nothing. Every morning, therapists, specialists, and speech experts came and went through the marble doors. They spoke gently, brought colorful flashcards, toys that lit up, and strange little exercises. They all left with polite smiles and the same defeated words. Her body is fine, Mr. Collins. Her voice works. Her brain works. But she doesn't want to speak. Grace Collins would always nod, trying to stay strong, but the moment the door closed, her strength melted into tears. She'd sit on Lily's bed, brushing her daughter's hair while whispering stories Lily never answered to. Edward, on the other hand, drowned himself in work. He was a billionaire owner of Collins Tech, a name known across the country. He built satellites, towers, and systems that connected the world, yet he couldn't connect with his own child. He'd stand outside Lily's therapy room sometimes, watching her through the glass. Her face was always calm, unreadable. He'd whisper to himself, say something, baby girl, anything. But she never did. At night, Grace often found him sitting by the fire, a glass of untouched whiskey in his hand, staring into the flames. Maybe it's my fault, he'd murmur. I was never there enough. Maybe she forgot my voice before she ever learned to use hers. Grace would take his hand and whisper, "Don't say that. She just needs time." But deep down, both knew time had already taken too much. Lily's world was small. Her days were quiet routines: breakfast in the grand dining hall, private tutors, therapy sessions, naps, no friends, no laughter, just the hum of silence. From her window, she could see children playing on the distant street, running, shouting, falling, and laughing. Sometimes she'd draw them on paper with bright colors, a world she could watch but never join. Her favorite spot was near the backyard fence, where the mansion ended and the normal world began. From there, she'd watch the birds, the passing cars, the gardeners, even the garbage collectors. To her, everything outside those gates felt alive. Grace noticed her daughter's quiet fascination but didn't understand it. "She loves the view," she'd tell Edward. But Lily wasn't watching the view. She was watching life itself. The therapist called it selective mutism. The doctors said it was psychological trauma. But no one could explain what she was waiting for or who she needed. One afternoon, during yet another failed session, Dr. Pierce, one of the most expensive specialists in the country, sighed and packed his bag. "I've tried everything," he told Edward. "Her vocal cords are perfect, her responses are there, but like her soul refuses to speak." Edward's voice cracked. "So what do we do?" The doctor placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes it's not about what you can do. It's about who she's waiting for." That sentence echoed in Edward's mind for days. Who she's waiting for. That evening, he found Grace sitting on Lily's bed, reading softly from a children's storybook. Lily sat beside her, expressionless, yet her blue eyes followed every word. Grace smiled faintly. "Once upon a time, there was a little bird who forgot how to sing." Edward stood at the door, his chest tight. His wife's voice trembled halfway through the story, and she closed the book, kissing Lily's forehead. "Maybe one day you'll find your song too," she whispered. Lily blinked once, almost like she understood. That night, as the house slept, Lily quietly got out of bed. Barefoot, she walked to the window and pressed her small hand against the glass, staring at the streetlights flickering beyond the gates. She could see shadows moving, people walking, cars passing, the distant laughter of children, and for a moment, a spark lit in her eyes, a longing for something she couldn't name. It was the same spark the cameras would one day capture. When she sat beside the garbage bins, beside a girl from the streets who would unknowingly open the door that therapists, doctors, and even love couldn't. Lily didn't know it yet, neither did her parents. But destiny was already waiting for her just outside the mansion gates. Asterisk. It was a cloudy afternoon when Lily first saw her. The sky hung low and heavy, and the mansion gardens were quiet except for the distant hum of sprinklers. Lily sat near the back fence, sketchbook in hand, drawing the birds perched on the wires beyond the gate. Her colored pencil moved softly: yellow wings, blue sky, green grass, all things she could see but never touch. And then she noticed movement, a figure, small, thin, and barefoot, rummaging near the trash bins outside the property wall. It was a girl, maybe 13 or 14, her dark skin glowing faintly against the pale concrete. Hair was tied messily, her dress faded and torn at the edges. She looked tired, but her eyes carried something bright, a quiet kind of strength. Lily watched, curious, as the girl lifted a small brown paper bag and peeked inside. When she noticed Lily's gaze through the iron bars, she froze. For a heartbeat, both stood, still, one in silence, the other in surprise. Then the girl smiled. A simple, genuine smile. "Hey," she said softly, waving a little. "Didn't mean to scare you. I'm not stealing or anything, just hungry." Lily didn't reply. Just blinked, clutching her sketchbook tighter. The girl tilted her head. "That's a nice drawing you got there. You like birds?" Still no answer. But Lily didn't move away either. The girl chuckled quietly. Guess you're not much of a talker. That's cool. I talk too much anyway. She pulled out a piece of bread from the bag and took a small bite before glancing back. Name's Amara. Lily watched every word like it was music. The girl's voice wasn't soft like her tutor's or careful like her therapist's. It was natural, real, alive. Over the next few days, Amara returned, sometimes with a small sandwich, sometimes with just a smile. She'd sit by the bins, humming songs she made up on the spot. Lily started coming to the fence every time, watching silently. Amara would talk about her sick grandmother, about the broken trailer they lived in, about how she wanted to become a nurse one day. You'd laugh if you saw where we stay, she'd say. Oof leaks, floor creaks, but Grandma says it's home. Lily never laughed, but her eyes softened a little more each time. One afternoon, Mara noticed Lily shivering slightly and slid her jacket through the gate. You'll catch a cold sunshine, she said with a grin. Don't want that, do you? For a moment, Lily hesitated, then reached out and took it. That tiny motion. That single act of trust was the beginning of everything. No doctor, no therapist, no $1 million program had ever reached Lily. But this poor barefoot girl, with nothing but warmth in her voice, had cracked the silence like sunlight breaking through clouds. Neither of them knew it yet, but the friendship growing between them would soon change both of their worlds forever. The morning it happened began like any other, quiet, heavy, and routine. Grace woke to an eerie stillness in the house. The maids moved softly through the halls, and Edward had already left for his study. But when Grace went to check on Lily's room, her heart stopped. The bed was empty. The blanket lay folded neatly, the window slightly open. Panic rushed through her chest as she called out, "Lily!" Her voice echoed down the marble corridor unanswered. Within seconds, security was running through the mansion. Edward, alerted by the commotion, stormed out of his office. "Check the garden, the pool, the driveway," he ordered, his voice breaking with fear. Then one of the guards shouted from the control room, "Sir, we found her camera 3. Edward rushed to the monitors. His breath caught in his throat. There she was, sitting on the stone steps behind the mansion, near the garbage bins, her favorite place by the back fence, and beside her was Amara. Edward's finger hovered over the panic button. "She's trespassing again," he muttered, anger rising. "She shouldn't be there." But then he saw something that made his blood run cold. Lily was smiling, not her usual silent, polite smile. This one was alive, radiant, the kind of smile that made her whole face glow. Edward leaned closer. Amara was talking again, hands moving as she folded something small and white, a piece of paper. She was showing Lily how to make a butterfly. Lily's eyes sparkled as Amara blew gently on the paper wings. Letting it flutter in the air, Lily clapped a sound they hadn't heard in years, and then she laughed. Grace's hands trembled as she joined Edward at the screen. "She's laughing," she whispered, tears forming. Then the unthinkable happened. Lily reached out, touching the paper butterfly gently. Her lips parted slowly, uncertainly. And then, clear as the morning light, she whispered a single word, "Happy." The sound was soft, fragile, but unmistakable. Grace gasped, covering her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. "Edward, did you hear that?" She spoke. Edward could barely stand. His knees weakened as he replayed the footage again and again. Each time, the word echoed louder in his mind. "Happy." He turned to his wife, his voice breaking. 7 years of silence. And she says her first word to a girl we almost threw out for trespassing. Grace's voice trembled through her sobs. "It wasn't money, Edward. It wasn't therapy. It was love." On the screen, Amara and Lily sat side by side, their laughter mingling with the morning breeze. No walls between them, no fear. Just two souls that somehow understood each other beyond words. Edward reached out and touched the screen gently, tears burning in his eyes. "She's free," he whispered. For the first time in years, the silence that haunted their home was gone, shattered by one word, spoken in the language of pure innocence. Happy. And though the world outside kept moving, for the Collins family, that single word became the heartbeat of a miracle. Asterisk, the next morning. Edward and Grace stood by the back garden gate, the same place where their daughter had spoken her first word. The guards had already brought Amara to the front porch, nervous and quiet. She looked frightened, clutching her worn-out jacket, expecting to be scolded or worse. But instead of anger, she was met with tears. Grace rushed forward and hugged her tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You gave my daughter something no one else could." Her voice. Amara stood frozen, unsure how to react. "I didn't do anything," she said softly. "I just talked to her." Edward smiled through watery eyes. "Sometimes that's all it takes." That day changed everything. Edward and Grace invited Amara and her grandmother to live in a small guest house near the estate. He made sure her grandmother received proper treatment and enrolled Amara in a nearby school. It wasn't charity, it was gratitude. Over time, Amara became part of their family. She and Lily were inseparable, drawing, laughing, and chasing butterflies in the garden. The mansion that once echoed with silence now sang with laughter. Lily's progress amazed every doctor. She began to speak more. Short sentences, shy giggles, words of joy. Every evening she'd sit beside Amara under the sunset and repeat the first word that changed her life: happy. Edward often watched them from the balcony, his heart full. He'd spent years building empires, yet he finally understood all the wealth in the world meant nothing if your heart was empty. Grace would smile and say she didn't just find her voice, she found her friend. And maybe that was the real miracle, two souls from completely different worlds teaching each other what happiness truly means. Sometimes miracles don't come wrapped in money or medicine. They come in the form of kindness from people who have nothing but a pure heart to give. If this story touched your heart, share it, because maybe someone out there needs to be reminded that love can heal what even the world's richest doctors can't.